Good morning. My name is Bokushu. It's Gay Pride Day today in New York. We won't be having any marches, I don't think, but I've got this on just in case. So happy Pride to everyone. And when I was growing up, there was a television program that I was very keen on called The Outer Limits. So there's been more than one version of this program. The one I'm referring to is the one that ran from 63 to 65. That's dating me, obviously. And among the episodes in this show, there was one called A Feasibility Study. And in this episode, aliens came to the planet Earth, and they scooped up a whole neighborhood in suburban Los Angeles and whisked it away to their own planet. So not just the people, but the land, the buildings, all of it was taken away. And so these people woke up the next morning and they weren't on their own planet anymore. But at first they didn't know. And they got up, they were doing their usual thing, their interactions were the way they always were on Earth. And then one of them left for work, and he drove off the reservation. And it was not pretty. And the aliens were really not pretty. That was a requirement. You know, if you were an alien back then, you really couldn't be attractive. So the reason for the abduction was that these aliens had a terrible disease, which resulted in them being unable to do anything. So very quickly as they matured, they became almost completely immobilized by the disease that they all carried. And they were hoping that if they abducted these people from Earth, that they would be able to use them as their arms and legs, and that these people from Earth would not get this disease and would be able to be their slaves. So it's a strange tale of middle-class, white, suburban people being turned into slaves on another planet. And it turned out not to be possible. Very quickly, a couple of the people got the disease. And despite the aliens' efforts to cure one of them, it didn't work. So then the aliens decided they would use the disease as a means of social control. And if the Earthlings didn't do what they wanted, they would infect them one by one. So this wasn't a very happy situation. And the Earthlings all got together in a church, and they decided to deliberately infect themselves to save the planet Earth. Because they knew that if they all caught the disease, if they became useless to their captors, they would no longer be interested in abducting people from Earth. So there's this very hallmark scene at the end of the episode where all these people, and includes Jewish people, no Buddhists as far as I can tell, I don't think that was on their radar screen. They had a couple Jews in the church with the other people, and they all just joined hands and gave each other this disease to save the Earth. And you know, many of these early science fiction programs had this kind of self-imposed requirement for an uplifting moral moment like that. You know, where the goodness of humanity against these inscrutable forces from beyond our planet was affirmed and was victorious. So I contrast this very heartwarming joining of hands to get the virus to save the world with a not so heartwarming current trend of joining hands to get the virus to destroy the world. kind of like the whole plot of this Outer Limits episode has been turned around. And we're the aliens. And we don't seem to have a choice about our behavior. So, you know, they were free to choose back then in the 60s, but not now. So, not wearing a mask, not social distancing, joining hands, frequenting bars, restaurants, and clubs, in many places is a political statement, not a public health concern, but a political statement until the consequences of that get out of control and the virus gets out of control. And then the earth is threatened. But it just, you know, it just shows the interesting gap between our mythology about human behavior, about what we want to believe human behavior is. And what it's really about is it's a big fucking mess. We don't have a church that we can all go to and join hands to save the planet. And if we did, I don't think we'd be going there. Maybe half of us would. Which half? So in this talk and in my last talk, I talked about COVID-19 and what a terrible disease it is. But it's really not the disease. It is a symptom, actually, of a more fundamental disease. And it's a disease that this practice that we're engaged in is specifically designed to address. And that disease is the self. That disease is our building up, maintaining, and affirming the self in opposition to other selves, in opposition to the earth, in opposition to all the plants and animals, which we take as our tools and our assets rather than our allies, rather than our supports, rather than supporting the earth, rather than supporting plants and animals. We have this adversarial relationship with everything, including ultimately ourselves, many of us. I'll certainly include myself in that pattern of behavior. We seem to be laboring under a misapprehension that just because we are physically separate, seemingly physically separate from each other, that we are in fact independent and free. And we spend tremendous energy investing further in the appearance of separation and arguing vigorously for the so-called freedom that we think is our birthright. We think I must be free. My choices, my preferences, my beliefs, my desires must come first. And this delusion is killing this country, literally killing it. I mean, it's been strangling it for several years, if not many years, but right now it's literally killing it. So it bears examination, not as a matter of intellectual inquiry, but as a matter of life and death. We must examine this tendency we have to cling to ourselves at the expense of everything else. The denial of reality and the assertion of the self go hand in hand, and that is the pattern that is unfolding right now. There is a lot of money to be made, and there are a lot of votes to be had in denying reality and asserting the self. 500,000 people have died of this disease, COVID-19, because of the other disease, many of them because of that other disease called self, and its corollary, other. A quarter of the deaths have been in the United States, and far more than anywhere else. So let's talk about the disease under the disease. And let's talk about what medicine there might be for that disease, because our practice can help with that. And there's a koan I'd like to bring up in relation to this, which happens to be called Medicine and Disease Subdue Each Other. And it's case 87 in the Blue Cliff Record. And it goes like this. Yunmen, teaching his community, said, medicine and disease subdue each other. The whole earth is medicine. What is yourself? So the first thing we might notice about this koan is that Yunmen seems to be calling attention to diametrically opposed things. On one side, there's medicine, and on the other, there's disease. And in our conventional understanding of things, the disease comes first and the medicine second. Occasionally, we think in terms of prevention and anticipate and take medicine before disease arises. So there's also an interesting aspect of time invoked in this seeming opposition. But do we really know which is disease and which is medicine? Are we always so confident in our judgment of that? In 1819, on the eastern shore of Maryland, 2-year-old Samuel Ringgold Ward was deathly ill, weak with fever, immobile and sleepless. His mother had complained bitterly about the whipping of his father. And because they were slaves, her complaints were deemed outrageous and unacceptable. And her owners determined that she would be sold because of her rebellious nature. But there was a problem, as they saw it. 2-year-old Samuel was very ill, and if his mother was sold away, he might die, thus depriving the owners of anywhere from $400 to $2,000. So they were faced with a conundrum. Their outrageous idea that another human being could be sold away as their property, and the even more outrageous idea that the child of that person was worth more than the principle that the mother should not rebel. It's just so twisted. And Samuel Ringgold Ward tells it in his own biography. I'm just going to show you what he looked like. A very handsome guy. He looks really strong, and he had to be, to survive whatever illness he had. But the point of the story, as much as anything, is that Samuel Ringgold Ward's illness was medicine. Because of his illness, his family was not broken up. His mother was not sold away. And during the time of his convalescence, his mother hit upon an idea that they would escape, that they would be free. And so it happened that they fled the eastern shore of Maryland for Cumberland County, New Jersey, where they settled among Quakers. So this is an instance where disease was, in fact, medicine. Not only in the sense that Samuel's family was kept together, that the heartbreak of a sale of his mother was prevented, but that he grew and went on to become one of the greatest abolitionists. So great that Frederick Douglass considered him vastly superior in oratory skills. And Ward worked together with Douglass and many others to courageously free millions from bondage. And when I say they freed millions from bondage, I hardly limit that number to the slaves. Did they not free us? Are we not being freed right now? They were medicine to a sick society that remains very sick, that never has yet come to its senses. 200 years after Samuel Ringgold Ward's almost fatal illness, we are deathly ill in this country. And the consequences of that illness are visible in each moment. And each of us has a responsibility and an opportunity to treat that illness. How do we do it? Another great healer, Linji, said this: I don't have a particle of Dharma to give anyone. All I have is cure for sickness, freedom from bondage. What kind of bondage is Linji referring to? I think the Bodhidharma's comment on the 9th precept is a good clue about what Linji was talking about. Bodhidharma writes, self-nature is subtle and mysterious. In the realm of the selfless Dharma, not contriving reality for the self is called the precept of not being angry. There you have it, the nutshell version of our work, not contriving reality for the self. And there is so much anger in this country right now, on all sides, for so many reasons. Each side sees itself as medicine, and the other side as disease. And I have to say, I'm right there with them. I open the newspaper and there's the enemy. So, we've all got this. And the first step is to recognize it and acknowledge it. I see my own viewpoint as the correct and healthy one. While the people who don't want to wear masks, who don't want to socially distance, who don't believe in systemic racism, think I'm the problem. I'm the disease. I'm the thing that must be wiped out for America to be good and clean and pure again. Great again. Both sides of the question are equally valid and equally false. The fact that we happen to agree with one side or another makes absolutely no difference. It's all delusional. All viewpoints are unreal. And it's confusing, isn't it? We seem so real to ourselves. Our opinions, our preferences, our desires seem so vibrantly real also. The medicine that cures us of this illness, of believing in our own preferences and desires as reality, is the whole earth, as Yunmen puts it. The whole earth. All of it, not just the part we prefer, not just the viewpoint we admire, not just the opinion we cling to, but all of it. Often it's the refusal of the world to conform to our preferences, to militantly oppose our viewpoints, that can yield the most profound advances in our own awareness of ourselves and the world at large. So we should be grateful for the strife and tension, because it is extremely enlightening. If we allow it to be, it can really help us to break through. Yuan Wu writes, medicine and disease subdue each other. This is just an ordinary proposition. If you cling to existence, he speaks of non-existence for you. If you're attached to non-existence, he speaks of existence for you. If you're attached to neither existence nor non-existence, he manifests the 16-foot golden body for you in a pile of crap and rubbish, appearing and disappearing. A pile of crap and rubbish, appearing and disappearing. Does that not perfectly describe our current situation? Can you see the 16-foot golden body right under your feet? Until my mother died 2 years ago, almost to the day today, we always argued. She grew up in Brighton Beach, not far from where Bernie Glassman was born and grew up, although he was 8 years her junior. They died just a few months apart from one another. My mother was the daughter of 2 immigrants, the niece of a labor union president. She grew up in a very liberal Jewish household, a single parent, liberal Jewish household. But in her later years, she settled in San Diego in a very, very conservative suburb, and she marinated there for years. And over time, she grew to become very anti-immigrant, very pro-military, a loyal viewer of Dr. Oz and an ardent follower of his quackery. She thought he had the right medicine. She thought Fox News had the right medicine. We argued about it over and over and over and over. We disagreed about everything. Was she medicine and was I disease? Or was I medicine and she disease? Surely, it has never been a matter of being right and wrong. Surely it has always been a matter of life and death. One time when my mother was particularly exasperated with me, she turned about and said in an indignant voice, "I gave you life." That was her ultimate comeback. And all I could think of then and now is, well, I didn't ask you to, girly. That was your decision. Don't use that on me. Years and years later, at our summer ongo at the Grail, I scattered her ashes in Moodna Creek. All the guilt, all the ingratitude, all the disease and all the medicine flowed through my fingers into the water and flowed away. And in that moment, medicine and disease truly subdued each other. In that moment, we shared the last word. The whole earth is medicine. What is yourself? In many homes, a mirror conceals the medicine cabinet. People cannot help looking directly at themselves as they open the cabinet to reach for the medicine. They come face to face with themselves. What are they looking at? And what are they reaching for? When people open the medicine cabinet, the image shifts and disappears. They vanish. They reach for a bottle and they find to their dismay that it is completely empty. no medicine to be found. The self, reaching for medicine, cannot help using itself to obliterate itself, however briefly. Form and image, Republican and Democrat, mother and son behold each other and are mutually subdued. The self is the vehicle of liberation for the self. All we have to do is keep looking right at ourselves, steadily, meticulously, compassionately, reaching for the bottle, for what we think will cure us, heal us, make us whole. We discover that it is empty, that what reaches for it is empty. It's all in the reaching. We just have to keep reaching. I'll conclude with a verse by Yuan Wu. Fundamental reality, fundamental emptiness, one form, one flavor. It is not that a subtle entity does not exist. It is not a matter for hesitating over. Clear and lucid, this contains the whole world.